And we are back with our final session of the day with the topic Electronic Industries Evolving Supply Chain. Over the course of the day, we have heard various panels speak about the resilience of cargo industry, the distributed supply chains that the industry is reimagineering, the use of and importance of digital transformation as well as secure and resilient network. So now let's hear from our final sets of speakers on how electronics industry is evolving its supply chain to reach out to every last consumer in the world. I have with me Mr. Glenn Hughes, Director General of TIACA, as the moderator of the session. Glenn Hughes has been a strong proponent of technology, innovation, and sustainability of air cargo, driving change with initiatives supporting the emerging air cargo talent, cargo modernization, and recognizing worldwide initiatives driving positive change in the global cargo fraternity through annual awards. Glenn is a charismatic and highly respected leader who has an unparalleled track record over the past 3 decades of driving change in the air cargo industry and promoting its value to governments, partners, and across the aviation industry. A warm welcome, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Parul, and it's a pleasure to be speaking to you and your incredible audience today, which we've just heard is about 4,000 from across the globe. And it's very fitting, therefore, that we're talking about the electronic supply chain, because it's the great innovative electronics industry that has enabled this ability for the whole world to connect and see and hear such great speakers as particularly your panels and your last speaker, the Minister and the Senior Economic Advisor, give their wholehearted support to the air cargo industry, which is tremendous. Well, I also want to thank you for putting together an incredibly esteemed and highly expert panel. I'm going to read some quick introductions about each of the 5 panelists, but their full bios, I believe, are on the website. First of all, we're very pleased to have Dr. Pramod Sant, who is the Vice President, Head of Import, Export and Customs from Siemens Limited. Pramod he's basically been involved and is managing a particularly big region, which includes India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and the Maldives. He's been involved for more than 30 years in imports, exports, customs, foreign trade, and supply chain management. And today he manages about 45,000 shipments and is, I believe, the top importer of air cargo at Mumbai. And he's recently been awarded a Doctor in Excellence. So welcome, Dr. Pramod Sant, and I'm pleased to see you on the panel. We also have George John. George is the Customer Quality Leader for Supply Chain Operations for Cisco Systems. He's based in Bangalore. As I say, George is the site leader, and he leads a very highly focused team looking at supply chain operations and quality. He also has a wealth of experience of more than 25 years experience in IT, manufacturing and quality. And I was very interested to read that his son is following in his footsteps and also going into electrical engineering. So welcome, George. So that represents the shipper manufacturer side of things. We now have somebody representing the logistical side. So we have Peter Pensil. Peter is currently the Chief Operating Officer for Air Freight within the CEVA Logistics division based in Marseille in France. Prior to this, Peter worked for UTI, DHL Global Forwarding as Senior Vice President Air Freight. And more recently, before CEVA, he was with Qatar Airways Cargo as the Senior Vice President Global Sales and Network Planning. Peter also has another lengthy history of over 30 years, and he has a particular mission to create or to turn CEVA into a major significant top 10 player through the international ranking. So welcome, Peter. We now have an airline representative, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Florian Pfaff. Florian joined Lufthansa. We have a consistent theme going here of multi-decades worth of industry experience back in November '89. He's currently the Vice President for Asia Pacific, based in Singapore since June of last year. Probably quite a difficult time to make a move in the middle of, prior to last year. So he was obviously still settling in during the time the pandemic arrived. Prior to that, Florian was, in fact, he was vice president for Germany based in Frankfurt. And prior to that, he was responsible for Europe and Africa and global accounts. He's also had some time based in the US, where he was director in sales and marketing. So Florian truly has a global perspective. One item I'd like to read, which is very prominent on his CV and very prominent from when you speak to Florian, is think positive. And I think that'll translate into his answers that will come through today. So welcome, Florian. And then finally rounding out this great panel is we have Raveen Pinto. He's the Vice President, Aviation Business at Bangalore International Airport Limited, BL. He also has over 33 years worth of experience in both aviation with the airline and airport sectors. In his current role, he leads the aviation business portfolio, focusing on route development, passenger and cargo business development, and concessionaire management. Prior to this, he's worked in GVK Airports as Vice President Aero Commercial at Mumbai. And prior to that, he also spent some time with Lufthansa, where he was the General Manager, Sales and Marketing for Western, Central and South India, based in Mumbai. So I think you'll agree it is a wonderful panel with some excellent and broad experience across all the major sectors which make the supply chain so important and so critical. So with that, I'd like to welcome all the panelists. I'd like to just kick off with a few quick bits of information, some statistics, some numbers to, as it were, introduce or indicate the scale of what we're talking about from the electronics industry. An Air Transport Action Group study revealed or identified that the electronics industry accounts for about 40% of the value of the entire international air cargo transport, which means that annually about $2.4 trillion worth of electronic components, final, finished sub-assemblies are moved around the world. A huge contribution to all of the global economies. We also know that air cargo is the preferred mode for some of the urgent, time-sensitive and consumer-demanded products, particularly when you look at the high value of those, and the unfortunate situation of a floating inventory may not be the best way for capital deployment if it's going on ocean. About 40% of air freight shipped from China to the US comprises consumer goods, of which 29% is high-tech products such as computer electronics. The global electronics industry is actually expected to grow 7% this year versus only a 3% reduction last year. And then when you look at India, you see that the production of electronic goods has increased by about 180% from 2014 to 2020. And it is actually one of the most significant growth areas with regards to the Indian production economy. Mobile phone production now accounts for 41% of the total electronic production in India, up from 10% just 6 years ago. And it's actually now, India is now the second largest mobile handset manufacturer in the world. And another area of growth, of course, is portable electronics globally. This market is anticipated to reach about 700 billion by the end of this year, which of course drives up demand for batteries, portable batteries, which then brings in additional questions or challenges for the industry to move these safely around the planet. So with those as some introductory words, and with the introduction of what a wonderful panel, I'd now like to just go into some questions. And of course, there is the ability for all of the viewers to, I believe, feed questions through the Q&A approach, and they will be fed through to us. I'd like to start by getting the shipper's perspective. So the first question is to Pramod from Siemens. Now, Siemens is a true global powerhouse, has nearly 400,000 employees in nearly 200 locations with dispersed manufacturing sites. How do you address the challenges of import and export to make sure that your factories get goods and products that they need to ensure that they can produce, and consumers and your business clients can get the products they require? So with that, I would hand over to Pramod, please.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. I think it's very important when we say Siemens, we say that, and you mentioned about 200 locations. So we very proudly say that we are in almost more than 140 countries, and we are only next to the Coca-Cola that we don't present into only few countries. So it's very important when we talk about the import, export, logistic, international trade. So we have made some really good, strong processes how we deal with this topic. And I will give some example, such as for import export, we have something called as internal control program, ICP. It gives a very detailed way how we are going to handle our trade, how our partners will be selected, how our custom brokers will be selected, what will be their criteria, how their due diligence will be done. At the same time, a very important thing is that we have a mandate that in each country, if there is a program, security program, like AEO, Authorized Economic Operator, we must participate and we should get that status. So this is a global mandate. So when India implemented this AEO program, we were one of the first to get it, the AEO accreditation. Uh, at the same time, we are also supposed to have internal checks on that, how we are monitoring AEO compliances. When it comes to a selection of forwarders, global airlines, we have a global contracts which comes, which Siemens Germany supports to us, how the vendors will be selected, how we will be handling them, which region we will handle. And then there are something like a standard conditions which comes that we have divided that, okay, there are delivery times 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, 96 hours. So it goes uniformly that I will select a freight forwarder who will be giving me 24 hours. So there is no ambiguity. Another thing is very focused on digitization. We want all our partners who will be linking to my system with EDI. So forwarders, when he cuts when I am keep making the invoice or packing list in any of my factory, the intimation goes electronically through EDI to forwarder, who is able to block the space, who is able to get inputs for his airway bill, and I get back the details of airway bill. So I get this all on EDI, which I am able to convert it to my custom broker or to custom department across the globe. So there is a lot of uniformity which helps us to bring into really operations in good way, with efficient way, and a scale of volume. We get the advantage. You also mentioned that in India we clear close to 45,000 consignments, and we are the one of the biggest at Mumbai International Airport. However, we will see that my custom clearance time is only 1.2 days average. So we are able to make this efficient operations. So I always feel that the processes digitization is a key to handle these topics across the world and to the in any region. I think these are my initial comments. Back to you, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Pramod. And we will definitely come back to two of the key aspects you mentioned there, which is digitalization and the key aspect of partnerships. Great. So moving on now to our second manufacturer, George. And we have to say thank you, George, because of course this whole platform today is being hosted by Cisco WebEx. So if anything goes wrong, we're all going to send you a message, please, about how we can reconnect. So you might have 4,000, but it's not going to go wrong. Now, Cisco has come a long way from selling routers and network interface cards in the mid-'80s. And as we've just explained now, and as we've all experienced from the last 12 months, the working from home and working from, as it were, desegregated and dispersed office locations is really putting a challenge on the electronics and the communication industry. So how do you see this impacting your business going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, and I'm also happy to be part of this esteemed panel. A lot of experienced folks in this panel, and pretty happy to be part of it. And also proud that we are using WebEx as a platform, which is a Cisco product, and it has helped not only Cisco but various other companies to operate from home. Right? We, as a company, overnight moved our employees of 80,000 people and 60,000 of our partners to work from home. Right? So we have been able to do that. And Glenn, your point is correct. Which you mentioned earlier, like electronics industry and another component of digitization has helped many companies, many people to operate in a very efficient manner or sail through this pandemic situation in a very smooth manner. That's what I would like to say. For electronics industry, for example, like Cisco, even Siemens, if you want to call, there are a lot of products which are now in great demand. Anything which is cloud software, which is delivered through cloud, is of high demand. If you look at companies which are being successful in moving into this work from home kind of mode, have been using SaaS kind of offerings. If you want the software delivery or it is in a digital format, whichever companies have invested on digital platforms have been successful. There are a lot of products inside of Cisco which is needed and is in great demand as we speak. The ones which goes into the core network, the ones which will increase bandwidth to the edge, because as you go home, many people go towards home. The bandwidth to the homes, bandwidth at the last mile is an increasing need. Before we could actually give the larger bandwidths to enterprises, now we need to give bandwidths to homes. And people are using more and more of their video. People want to get onto video to connect because that's how the world going forward is going to be. So everyone would have heard about the 5G transformation. The 5G is also going to make this transformation happen in a better way. And Cisco has got products in that space as well. So these are the ones which is in great demand. Another aspect which I would like to bring to the table is how do we do this in a secure way? Security has become very critical for us in this world. If you are able to operate it in a secure manner, then your business is secure. So while people move towards their homes, or they go and operate from, they say homes, but people could be operating. This is what one of the fears our CIOs have, is that if you're operating from home, you could operate from a coffee shop. You could operate from a shared workspace. How are we going to be secure? How is our data going to be secure? How is our equipment going to be secure? So security plays a very, very important role, and security-related products are becoming more and more demand. Glenn, you mentioned Cisco started as a networking gear company, but now we are one of the largest providers of security products and security products from the cloud. So various companies which are providing security services, collaboration products, data bandwidth related items, cloud delivery, all of those are in great demand for us to move through this transformation, like a disruption like the pandemic. That's what I would like to say, Glenn. Back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, George. And thank you for also adding in security, as you say, as another key component. Now, turning to Peter, because one of the things that Pramod mentioned is obviously the need for great partnerships. And ACFI was very interested to read has established a number of very vertical, specialized areas of solutions, one of which is for the electronics industry. And I think you have a quote saying that you want to be a fully integrated transportation and logistics solution provider for complex high-tech sector. And you have quite a number of tailored solutions. So how do you see this sector in terms of overall strategic importance for ACFI Logistics?
Ken, and I think it is a great question because that is what it's all about, is to provide solutions to your customers. Because at the end of the day, buying air freight capacity, and of course, dependable on which time of the year, as how it was in the past, or now after the outbreak of the pandemic, it changed also a huge part of that. But going and more focused towards the customers are looking for a reliable schedule with reliable pricing, but also to make sure that there is full visibility from origin to destination. And also, if they changing their IMCO terms or they service solutions towards their final customers, how do we as ACFI Logistics are making it happen for them? So rather than flying it in, for instance, from China into the US and bring it to a warehouse, the possibility also to do the direct deliveries on the times that their customers are in the need of their products, because the cost and the income of sales for those companies is critical. A lot of competition, and we saw a huge increase in tonnage on air freight when you compared after the pandemic broke out. A lot of people need to work from home, so a lot of hardware requests. So we also saw a lot of hardware movers directly to the end customers. So there, what we are trying to do, create visibility from door to door, so that also they can control us in the KPIs that we agreed delivering to their final customer, because at the end of the day, that final customer is paying the bill to the manufacturer of the high-tech equipment. And that is a critical aspect, because if those people can sell the products, it automatically has a really huge impact on reliability of that vendor towards their customers. And we are a part of that, and we trying to find ways, how can we optimize, how can we make it happen? Must be the final delivery in the US take during the night, so that we can already make sure that the inventories in the stores are on the right levels, etc., etc. So that is a huge component in the solution design, because we believe that the added value to our customers is the solution, rather than telling them, yes, we have the capacity on day 1 to day 7. This is the capacity availability. Nevertheless, that's still important. Rates are still important, but it's very important to make sure that their final customer is happy with their logistics provider that the manufacturer selected.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I think the story is building really nicely now. So turning to Florian. So we've heard about the diverse situation with regards to manufacturing, and I think Peter has just highlighted perfectly that a lot of this product is critical. You know, it has to move, because it's either businesses waiting to do business or offices waiting to interact with each other. So as a carrier, you're often faced with lots of demand for often different types of products moving around the world. When it comes to things like the high value or time sensitive electronics, you have a number of specialized products. Does Lufthansa Cargo deal with these differently from other products that you might have, to make sure that the predictability and reliability that Peter has talked about is something that then can be supported with you as a partnership?
Yeah, good evening also from my side. Very happy also to be here in the panel. Before I answer the question, just let me say I'm really happy to be here, see so many familiar faces here in the panel, former colleagues, customers, former competitors, now again customers, and then of course Clint. Very happy to see you. I mean, we just saw us last night when we had the farewell of our CEO Peter Gerber, and I was really happy to see you giving a farewell speech there. And one more thing, today or tomorrow, a year ago was my last business trip, and that was actually to India. We had the fair in Mumbai, and that was exactly 1 year ago. And I saw also, I was listening to the panel all day here, and I saw also a lot of customers, colleagues, partners, and I can only say I wish I would be able to travel again to India. It's been a long time. Talking about products, I mean, this is kind of what we of course do. We offer different products, especially now for these kind of customers. I think that's pretty clear. We differentiate mainly by speed, of course, also by different handling, and I think especially because we have Siemens here in the call, I think this is one example which still is very familiar to me, because I was dealing with Siemens, of course, 8 years before I came to Asia, and Siemens was one of my main customers out of Germany. And we always try to accommodate the Siemens products with the right product. And we had to bring it up from one level to the next level. So we started with Flash. In the end, we went to Courier solution because of the demand from Siemens. And the possibilities are there for customers of Siemens to order basically like to the very last minute. And then there is a warehouse just outside of Frankfurt Airport, and we managed to give you a very, very short delivery time, and that was like 90 minutes before our flight departed. And we, as I said, we started with TD Flash, which is it's one of our fast products, but then we even had to upgrade it to Courier solutions, because that was basically the required demand from our customers. So then I think that's also known. We even have one product above that that's called emergency solutions. So what we are trying is always to offer the right product to the respective demand from our customers.
Excellent. Thank you, Florian. And I think, again, you talk about that, about tailored solutions, etc., which is excellent. So thank you for that. So, Raveen, turning now to the airport side, and I was actually interested to read that Bangalore, it's a bit of known as a tech hub. When I was just reading some of the businesses or companies that have kind of set up production or headquarters there, so you've got 3M, you've got Bell, you've got Barrett Electronics, Bosch, ABB India, and many, many, many others. What do you think is the secret of the success for the region? And we've heard about how these products are critical, time sensitive, quality is at the utmost. So what is it that you've been able to do successfully to attract in that number of people and therefore using the airport, but also manufacturing or setting up offices there? I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, that's good. We can hear you. Just go ahead and speak. We can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn, for the introduction and the question. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow members of the esteemed panel. Good to see you, Pramod, after some time. I think last we met was when I was with Lufthansa in Mumbai. Let me start by thanking ACFI, the host of this event, for inviting me as a panel member for this discussion. On behalf of Bangalore International Airport, I'm happy to be here. As to Glenn's question, I think we all know Bangalore is known as the Silicon Valley of India and is a worldwide magnet for electronic industry ecosystem. The pandemic has definitely made a paradigm shift in the way technology is viewed and adopted. What would take 10 years of absorption of digitization has been adopted and deployed in the last 12 months. If we view the airport and airline processes in the last 12 months itself is ample proof of touchless technology adoption as preferred way of functioning. Work from home or work from anywhere will only increase the importance of electronics in our personal as well as business environment. For Bangalore Airport, currently electronics contributes 9% of exports and 20% of imports. Along with electronics, the top commodities obviously are the mobile components, electrical components, network and communication devices. Bangalore is the Silicon Valley electronics city, and the tech-savvy appetite for electronics is just exploding. And I think that's one of the reasons we see that we have a lot of requirements, and the companies are really flourishing in this environment. So if you look at it, Karnataka has a robust ecosystem which has been in place since the 70s, 80s. Some factors which have helped Bangalore evolve as a center for electronics and IT hub is based on some fundamental underlying factors: strong culture of education, engineering, electronic, software, mechanical or medical fields. I think you go to any Indian family and the first thing they look out is to see as far as education goes, it will be an engineering or a medical system. So from that perspective, I think the availability of skilled manpower in electronics, software, engineering in Bangalore and in Karnataka has helped some of these companies to set up. Also, the educational institutions that are there in India has also played a very pivotal role in attracting talent for the high technology jobs that are available over here. Private entrepreneurial foray also in this field long before the government support and things like that. The IT revolution in Bangalore city started way back in the 80s, even before the liberalization of the economy. It all began in the 80s when companies like Infosys, Wipro, the Indian stalwarts started setting up, followed by Texas Instrument, Hewlett Packard, IBM, SAP Labs, all reputed companies. Also manufacturing companies like Siemens, Micro Bosch, ABB, Festo had presence in India much before Bangalore became an international brand. Government-owned public sector presence also helped companies like ISR and Indian Space Research Organization, BHEL, BEL. All these have also added to the ecosystem over here. Government policy support also, the software technology parks, special economic zones, all these have helped setting up Karnataka and Bangalore as the electronic and software hub for India and the world. So all this has resulted in various companies setting up shop. And I think this is one of the fundamental factors which have driven the growth of electronics in Bangalore. Thank you, Glenn.
Excellent, thank you, Raveen. And I really like the way that you've linked it to actually looking at the education and skills as a starting point. So I think this is something that many other regions around the world could actually learn from, to say that if you invest in the next generation of people, you then will actually create that skilled workforce, which will attract in the companies because they want to tap into that expertise and create flourishing economies. So I think that's a great success factor. Excellent.
Absolutely.
So going back to, now we've had a great assessment there of the current situation. I'd like to look ahead now a little bit. So Dr. Pramod, I'd like to put a question to you about blended supply chains. Often when I talk to different manufacturers around the world, etc., they talk about using artificial intelligence and advanced analytics and predictive analytics to try and foresee to a much greater degree of accuracy what future evolutionary trends will be for customer demand. And therefore they can look at blended supply chains rather than perhaps last minute urgent supply chains. Do you have a strategy to look at blended supply chain strategy going forward in terms of a modal mix? We of course would love everything to go air cargo. And I'm just listening to my colleagues there from the industry talking about the airport side, the freight forwarder side, and the airline side. I can't think of any better mode than those. Those three guys linked together. But I'm sure you're also looking at other factors. So what is your strategy going forward with regards to things like supply chains?
Yeah. So thank you, Glenn. The very important thing which you mentioned about blended supply chain. See, when people talk about supply chain, they always first talk about the cost, then the quality and the time, only three things. But I think we need to go beyond these three parameters. Very important thing, what is proved now is the responsiveness is one of the very important factor. Resilience is a very important factor. How, when such a COVID came, nobody was knowing what to be done. So how fast we are able to respond, how we will learn, resilience is important. So these 2 points, I will say that in blended supply chain strategy, they play a very more vital role. There are a few more points which are very important. One is the supply chain security. We need to give, when we talk about air cargo, I think we need to give a due weightage to a supply chain security, very critical. Then sustainability is one of the point where how you are going to handle it, what kind of packages you will use, how you will do that, and how you will ensure that your environment is protected, plays a very vital role into a blended supply chain strategy. And another thing is innovation. I think there will be a lot of disputes that, okay, maybe what is changed in air freight industry in last few years, but if we do not innovate, I think it is going to be a very tough situation. So these few points must be catered into your blended supply chain strategy. Also, when it comes to Siemens, see, we have many verticals into Siemens. We are into industrial electronics also more. So our strategy is depend on the each type of products and which type of customer we serve. It could be when I talk about the say healthcare, and Florian gave example of a TD Flash and Frankfurt warehouse, and I will tell you for last close to 10 years how we order for healthcare spares is that in India it is a 12:30 time. We know that 3.5 hour or 4.5 hours Germany is ahead. So I can have a cutoff at 12:30 in Indian time. The order is goes to that Frankfurt warehouse. The Frankfurt warehouse are able to take out the material in few minutes, and it connects the Lufthansa flight at 12:30 in the afternoon, a Frankfurt Mumbai flight. When it is connected, I get the papers. I submit it to customs. I complete my custom clearance time well before in evening Indian time 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. This flight lands at 1:10 in India in night. And by that time custom clearance is over, deferred duty is under deferred duty, so I don't have headache to pay deferred duty. I only wait for a segregation of airline. The custodian or a handling agency do the segregation. I'm able to take sometime delivery at 10 o'clock in morning, and I distribute these spares across the India to the various hospitals. So this is one of the fastest change which we have developed. Excellent collaboration with my people in Germany, with Lufthansa, my custom brokers, and my custodian in Mumbai, they know very well that every day there is a cargo on Lufthansa flight, which is the most Indian, and that needs to be segregated fast. So this kind of blended strategy works, and you have to have a different strategy for each product, each customers, and then only you will be successful. So these are the few points. There are lot many examples how you handle a different type of commodity, different strategies. But I always say that don't give only attention to only 3 points. You need to do something innovation. Look at the how fast you can change this and how it is your innovation in that. So these are very few important points when I say to blended supply chain strategy. Back to you, Glenn. I hope I have answered you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Pramod. And I think Florian will be sending you flowers for that wonderful testimonial there in terms of strategic partnerships and effective and efficient supply chains. George, I'd like to ask you a similar question, but we've just heard how important it is for resilience and for, as it were, quality in the supply chain. So what sort of considerations do you make when you determine where to manufacture new products? Because of course it may not just be about finding the cheapest place to manufacture it if you're unable to have those good relations with customs, with freight forwarders, with warehousing, and with airlines, etc., to get to market. So George, what sort of considerations do you go through when you look at a new place to produce a product?
Glenn, it's an important topic, where to manufacture, right? Because now people are looking at resiliency, like what Pramod mentioned. We need to have different places to manufacture, and where will we choose, and which place will we choose to manufacture. Like Pramod mentioned, there used to be a triangle before, that is cost, quality, and delivery. That's the mantra on which supply chain used to work. 20 years back, if you would ask where to manufacture, it is basically the cheapest place. Which is the cheapest place? Go manufacture the cheapest place, and from that place, if you can transport and export it out very fast, then go sell it at the place where it is most profitable for you. So that's the simple logic in which people used to select the manufacturing sites. Now it has grown into various factors. Pramod mentioned one very important parameter on sustainability. How can you be green, sustainable, ethical way of manufacturing? So we are looking, companies like Cisco are looking for places where we can do the manufacturing in a more ethical way. We are more interested in manufacturing in countries where there are good, strong rules and supporting policies to do that manufacturing in ethical way. I'll give an example. We would not want to manufacture in a country where the government there allows child labor, or there's no rule on child labor. We want strong governance to be there in those countries where we can do manufacturing in an ethical way, and it is fair for our competition as well. So it's not only the cheapest, we want it to be done in a fair and ethical manner. So that's one of the biggest considerations what we have. The next one is the capability. Do we have the capability there? Like Praveen mentioned, do we have the capability in terms of human resources? Do we have the capability in terms of equipment? Do we have the capability in the skills? Do we have the capability in terms of the component supply chain? Is that all possible? And including things like what you said about customs, how easy is the customs clearance? How difficult is it? And there are some barriers related to duties and these trade barriers which has come up. If you look at the Gartner survey, it says that the 92% of the supply chain leaders are worried about the trade barriers, more than the pandemic, more than the natural disruptions. They're more worried about how the trade barriers and the fluctuations in the way they're doing. So it's not that once a trade barrier is put, it stays there. After 6 months, the countries change it, right? Or if a new government comes, they'll change it. So it's not like they do it once. It's a constant change, and it's becoming very difficult for the supply chain people to work through that. So the parameters have gone beyond cost, quality, and that is like given we need to do. The new ones are resiliency, and the government, whether the government supports strong policies to protect and ensure that there is fair play. Because in countries where the fair play is not there, or competition or someone could do products cheaply by not following the rules. So we want to make sure it is fair. There are various parameters related to green. How do we do it in a green fashion? How about the digital acceptance in the country? Is it more of paper kind of place, or is it more digital? That acceptance is more on the digital way. Do we have items like our partners are also ready to do those stuff like us companies like Cisco? And I think Pramod was mentioning several things is similar to Cisco as what he has mentioned. I think many of the companies are going in the same direction. So that's what I would like to say. Back to you.
Excellent, thank you. So it's not, as you say, it's not just about price, it's about the suite of things. So that's excellent. Thank you very much there, George. So Peter, there was a lot of press recently about some changes within the group with your parent CMA CGM, which is one of the top 3 shipping lines. And of course, you are a major significant freight forwarder or logistics partner. But in the last few months, you've also actually now, or the group has acquired 4 A330 freighters, which is quite an investment. How will you utilize this capacity going forward? Will it be on a sort of specific for products? Will the electronics industry get access to more main deck capacity, etc.? What's your strategic thoughts on that?
First of all, the idea of our shareholder is that he wants to offer in very difficult times a total solution to his customers when it comes to the ocean side. By acquiring 4 of those manufactured A330 freighters, give him the possibility to start up what we will call internally CMA Air Cargo, and that will be as a separate airline. And we will approach that as the same way, as a provider to CEVA Logistics, as a provider of capacity on the routings that they select. Yes, I would lie if I say that we don't have a very strong relationship with our mother company, and in this case also with CMA Air Cargo. So what we are doing, we are buying capacity that we believe makes sense for CEVA and of course for our customers, and that is mutual. That's in the high tech. It's also the routing, because the first routings will be deployed Europe into the East Coast of America. And how to optimize that. So that is what we are doing. Is from a CEVA perspective, we are pre-buying capacity. The other capacity will maintain from CMA that they will go into the market with. And hopefully when it makes really sense, also from a CMA perspective, I think is this the beginning? They want to grow. They are ambitious. And they want to build up a cargo carrier for the future that has sufficient capacity to serve the market. And in a market where we are in today, I think it's a great thing that our shareholder made the decision to invest that kind of money to purchase those 4 aircrafts.
Excellent, thank you, Peter. And I think it's one of those examples again of where the world moves on. As organizations, we have to be innovative, we have to respond. You saw, as a group, you saw an opportunity, and the world changes. And moving to Florian, because I'd like to, again, continue with that theme of innovation and change. Lufthansa's the Q3 results, we're still waiting, I think, Q4. But clearly, by your CEO's comments of the Lufthansa group, Lufthansa Cargo was a star performer throughout 2020. And you also employed some very innovative solutions, such as flying passenger flights with, passenger aircraft for cargo-only operations. I think you coined the phrase Praetor, and some of the Praetors where you actually then removed the seat, so you have quite a few of those flying through the world as well. Do you see that trend continuing, Florian, and particularly the notion that the cargo value to the industry at a time when the passenger flights are still severely constrained, and we notice even with successful vaccine programs, there's still quite a delay expected until passenger networks can fully resume. So what's your thought on the continuing trend of employing passenger aircraft for cargo-only operations?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I need to go back to Dr. Pramod again, and talking about how we set up this product at the time, and I think it's really a blueprint. because it wasn't that easy, right? It just, we spent hours, and your counterpart, you probably know that, he brought all the people together. So we had 2 forwarders on the table, we had Frankfurt Airport at the table, and we had our hub manager at the table. And I remember that it was in a conference room. In my office I think we were like 20 people, but I think it's a blueprint, because everyone who is responsible in the chain was actually at the table, and I think we were able to come up with the best solution. And maybe, I could also add a few more comments on what you said about the supply chain, sustainability, responsiveness, and so I think these are also from our side very, very important topics, especially sustainability. And I don't know if you have time to talk about that later. But coming back to your question, Glyn, the Pax freighters, I actually don't like the word freighter, so I call them Pax freighters. We also did that, and I think that was coming back to Dr. Bramwood, responsiveness. We had the need to respond urgently, and then I'm very happy that it took not too long. I'm also a little bit, think things must go faster. But I think we did it in a few weeks, right? We brought these Pax freighters into China. That's where we needed them most. And then it took another, about 10, 14 days until we were able to remove the seats. And that, of course, in a big group like Lufthansa, at that time still was 140,000 people. It's not that easy to convince everyone, overnight to remove seats out of passenger seats, airplanes, because I'm more than 30 years with the company, and I have not really seen that, except maybe right at the very beginning, we had the quick change operation in Europe. Maybe some of you remember that, but at least the last, let's say, 25 years, I have not seen anything like that. So we were, I think, quite successful. A lot of airlines have been quite successful with that to respond to the needs of customers around the world. Of course, very much driven by the PPE business out of China, but we have seen flights out of Malaysia. We are still seeing actually flights, Pax freighters in these days from Lufthansa, but of course also from a lot of competitors. We had probably something like 500 Pax freighters. That is actually a small number. I know from other partners, like joint venture partners, United, for example, they had thousands. Peter, you probably remember some numbers from Qatar. They probably also had more. But for us, it was the right number because this is, to answer your question, will that be sustainable? I don't think it will be sustainable, not for a very long time. So what's my perspective on the capacity in for the next months, or let's say at least for 2021? I don't think the capacity situation will change a lot. I think whatever you read from IATA or from studies, I have a good friend at McKinsey, Ludwig Hausmann. He also always shares a lot of information with me, and I don't expect that the recovery from the passenger flights will be really substantial in the first half year of 21, and hopefully we will see more flights than in the second half year. But I think in the end, we still have to understand that there will be a capacity crunch also in 21. And when it comes to these passenger freighters, the unit costs, of course, they are, they're much higher than if you operate a freighter, because if you are really good, you can load maybe up to if you're lucky, you can get to 50 tons, but normally you are way below that, 35, 40 tons in the range if you load the cabin, if you have the right product, and of course the cabin is restricted. You cannot load everything into the cabin. Then we also see higher fuel costs. If you look into where the fuel is today, it's anywhere 60 up. It used to be below 30, I think, in March last year. I think that was kind of the lowest, and I think that will also then trigger or has an influence on the performance, on the financial performance of these flights. And of course, you need to have a decent rate level. And I think so far we can still operate them. Other airlines, of course, sometimes have a different calculation. So I would see this topic of pax freighters to continue probably for quite some time. Probably I will see them at least in the first half year of 21. Maybe in the second half it will become less. But I don't think it will happen in 22, 23 on a large scale.
Great, thank you, Florian. And I think you raise a very important aspect of that, which is the price of fuel. Because as we saw when the world was in lockdown, the demand for fuel was at its all-time low. But as economies start to reopen, we're seeing now the demand is going up as production and manufacturing and other demands go up, so that the price of fuel going up, which does bring into account, as you say, the equation for the pax freighters, which is a much better term. So pax freighters is my new term for this, so thank you. So Raveen, continuing that question of capacity going forward, because if you look at the statistics for the types of products exported through Bangalore International Airport, 6 of the top 10 product types are either electronic, high-tech, or associated consumer electronics. Now, as we know that, and as the earlier statistics I revealed said that the industry is growing 7% globally and even faster than that in India, do you see that the increasing amount of production that's going to occur could ultimately have some challenges if the capacity crunch remains? The demand for freighter operations, whether or not it's pure freighters or pax freighters, is quite high. Many of these planes are operating at all-time levels of utilization. So do you see that's a particular challenge for your airport?
Yeah, I think if you look at our numbers, I think the freight numbers which we have been showing, we've been fortunate in India that we have been positive in the last 5 months compared to the previous year. No other airport in India has shown these numbers. So I think the kind of electronic and engineering goods that we cater to, as I said, 9% of exports and 20% of imports into Bangalore are electronics. And there are other components which are high yield for the airline, high density. So I think we have been fortunate that despite the disappearance of belly capacity for the airport, which was earlier 65 to 70% of our freight was carried by the belly capacity of the passenger aircrafts. This has actually not impacted us in the last 5 months. So which means freighters have operated, airlines have seen the yields out of the Bangalore market. So I think overall, I think there has been almost no impact, I would say, as far as capacity is concerned. Pricing, yes, has gone up. I think that has prioritized, other than the medical equipment, I think, which we saw a huge jump in because of the pandemic. I think the electronic engineering goods have added, to the overall performance of the carriers. For carriers and airports, cargo used to be ancillary revenue for a very long time. That has turned into, I would say, the mainstream revenue. So even for the airport, I think we have been concentrating on seeing how to develop our capacity as we go forward. We have huge plans for this. And we feel we'll be fully prepared to handle any types of shipments, whether it's electronic engineering or medical, in the months to come or years to come. Thank you, Florian.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that. Now, George, I'd like to actually go back a little bit of time now. In 2018, 2019, we saw a particularly challenging time for the global economy, with trade and tariff barriers being threatened by major economies. And even the whole question of the global economy was being put at risk because of certain administrations. Do you feel that this situation has now gone with a change of administration and with the events of last year, looking at it as a global problem for pandemic? Are we now closer as a global community, and therefore will global trade and the global economy flourish going forward? What's your thoughts?
So, first of all, I think these trade barriers are to stay for a long time. At least if you see, we have been talking to Gartner. So at least from Gartner, what they have surveyed, like what I mentioned some time back, 90+% of the supply chain folks feel that the trade barrier is the biggest impediment for them in this year as well as going forward. There are several countries where the people or the governments are looking at local manufacturing, localization to be done. And it's not only trade barriers. Trade barrier is one of the ways to do to ensure that manufacturing happens in a local way. It's not only manufacturing, data storage, the way how data gets managed. There is a regional, if you want to call it as regional, there's a regional block. If it's a small country, countries get together, become a block, and then try to negotiate what is needed for localizing in that area. So it is not going to go away pretty soon. This journey or this is being triggered for other reasons, for political gains, but it's actually going. It's already started moving, and it is not going to stop anytime soon. So the way I think companies like Cisco are operating is they are going to assume that this is going to continue because that's the only way we can safeguard ourselves from such kind of disruptions. So the way we are operating is like what Pramod mentioned and many of you have mentioned. How do we be resilient? Suppose we are hit by some of these kind of changes. How do we survive in this change for a long duration? It hits you as a company. I mean, this change hits you, but can you survive in that change as much as possible? If you cannot, then how do we recover fast? How do we recover and get back into business fast? So you might need to do what we are calling, many of the companies are calling as digital twins. You have twins. So twins can be in a digital form. It can be a redundancy. It can be redundancy in terms of components being supplied from two locations. It can be manufacturing done in two locations. It can be, there is a twinning concept on which many of the high-tech companies are working on. You have a PCB which can have a chip from one company as well as a chip from another company. So when you design the board, you need to have the board designed in such a way that it can accept chips from multiple companies. So we don't redo the board. Redoing the board, redoing the hardware will take 6 to 8 months. So it's better to design the PCB which can keep a CPU from, for example, from Intel as well as from Texas Instruments. It can be anything. It can be put there based on that situation at that point of time. So this is what we are looking for, and we are going forward. And I'm sure many of the companies are going forward in the same direction. Short answer, Glenn, this is something which is going to stay. And events like this have helped companies like Cisco to plan for much more bigger challenges, and we'll be able to see it through. One very important investment which most of these companies are accelerating now is on digitization. The more you digitize, the more the companies which have moved into that digital platform are the ones who are surviving and are able to change very fast. So the agility has come through digitization. And companies like Cisco, Siemens for sure, and many of the Lufthansa again, everyone is on the digitization, accelerating on digitization. Back to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So related to that, Dr. Pramod, I mean, research and development is crucial. And I think we've just heard about innovation and et cetera. Do you feel that the last 12 months, how has that impacted the R&D world? Has it accelerated it? Has it meant that other parts of the industry have actually tried to conserve cash and therefore have cut down on that? Or what's your thoughts?
Okay, I have my some views on R&D this thing, because every multinational or every company looks for a R&D development into India, because we have a talent of very high talent of engineers, English speaking people. So it is always a good points. However, when you come to R&D, definitely there are some challenges. Particularly, these challenges are into areas of logistics. Some are because of trade barriers, some are because of the rules regulation. If you look at the R&D people, those are highly technical people who are doing their thing. Today, if they want their one of the urgent parts or urgent spares, then sometimes it becomes very difficult to get a smaller quantity to get it this thing. Similarly, you need some machines, you need some machines to be repaired, something, this thing. So you have challenges on the return repair, you have challenges on free of charge samples. It takes a time. Maybe normal vanilla custom clearance takes much faster, but however, such items which are coming as a samples, which should come really, which is available in any part of the world, and they are ready to send the same day. But you have issues when it comes here. So quite a bit challenges on particularly R&D. There is no separate recognition as a R&D that okay, I am R&D center and I need some facilities which are not on fast track today. They are at a normal with a normal manufacturing same way they are treated. So that is one of the issues which we find as far as the R&D is concerned on logistics. Of course, there are some challenges on to and trade barriers. George mentioned very well. I am getting some item which requires a BIS approval or something. Nobody is going to get that approval because of one piece. So how to handle this situation? How to check into this thing? And it affects, it reduces your speed. However, still people are doing wonderful because they found that we can do lot many things. Of course, in R&D, particularly on finance side, also there are things how the things can be financed. R&D institutions which are handled or also have few challenges. So I think R&D needs to be much more focused so that it will give a new area really a good boost, and particularly in India. So I think there is a lot of wish list on R&D. Even though things are done better, people are doing good job. A lot many number of engineers are there. I am quite sure. Same with Cisco. You have fleet of engineers doing R&D for global products. But wish list is much more. I can say that. Yeah. Back to you, Glenn.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Now, I'd like to change direction slightly for a question to Peter. At the very beginning, we talked also about the rapid growth of portable and personal electronics. And with that brings an increased demand for lithium batteries, more powerful lithium batteries. I'm just looking at things like my PC battery life. You know, a few years ago, I was happy if I could get 2 hours with it unplugged. It's now, 12 hours, 10, 12 hours, which means we're compressing a lot more power into a lot more small, dense space. One of the challenges, or several of the challenges that arise thereof, is looking at the risk of counterfeit batteries, and I'm even going to look at counterfeit electronics in a broader sense, but of course counterfeit batteries have a safety aspect. So what can we do as a supply chain? And of course, as a freight forwarder, you're very much with your past background of being an airline as well, it's something that you're very, very involved in. Airlines are involved, forwarders are involved, manufacturers involved, because quite often, we've seen counterfeit batteries which have, as it were, the brand of a fully fledged proper manufacturer stated on it, and it's therefore an impact to the industry. So Peter, it's really a question of what more can we do as an industry? Have you got any thoughts about this, of how we can particularly tackle this particular risk or challenge going forward?
I'm a really pre-fighter that we must regulate this, that there must be real experts looking into how to carry, and we have to make it aware to the world that these are horrible things to happen, because if something happened, and it happened in the past, we know all the examples where we saw aircrafts being in fire, people injured, people died due to that, and I think we cannot afford that. So I think there must be a huge regulating part attached to that, to make sure that experts people look into it, and also experts on the freight forwarder side, on the airline side, on the IATA side, that we must join forces and start to say what is necessary to uplift, if possible, because also no is an answer sometimes, and always by saying yes, we only increase the risk that things will happen. So I really believe that we have to come up with a really firm product that we say experts within the companies can justify if it's allowed to fly or not, and with all the people involved. So not only the battery manufacturer or the car manufacturer, because batteries will increase, The size of the batteries will increase due to the fact of automotive companies are having huge ambitious plans to move away from the standard engines to be produced and to be geared up by fuel, and they want to become more and more in towards the battery industry as such. So on that perspective, I really feel, and we are really kicked it off internally. When I joined within CEVA, and Glenn, you know, in my past life, I was very vocal in the IATA boards when we spoke about it as from an airline perspective, because we cannot, as human beings, trying to make a dollar extra and then sacrificing consequences, losses when it comes to human beings, but also when you're talking about the fake industry, to call it like that, that we are also doing something what is really affecting the social responsibility when it comes to our planet that we live in. So all those combinations together, I think we really have to come up with a standard. We have to publish the standard. We have to name and shame if necessary. And I think Florian was one of the first to really be that outspoken in the past by saying, these are the ones who are doing it. It cannot be that we tolerate that as an industry. And I still applaud him for that, because I think that is the way forward. Create a platform where everybody has access to, which can and cannot be on an aircraft. Then also you will see that airlines will adopt and more airlines will allow to uplift if the industry can guarantee that all the necessary precaution measurements, packaging, fabrication are in line with the standards as set by the air cargo community.
Thank you, Peter, and that's very passionate, and I think we can tell your strength of feeling coming through that. I'd like to open that question up to the other panelists as well, actually, because it's such an important topic. And I see Dr. Pramod, so I'll come on to you, because I was also reading, and Florian as well, that the notion of counterfeit, we know, since the first product was manufactured, there was probably somebody there producing a counterfeit copy of it. And when we're talking about T-shirts and bags and other stuff like that, there's brand reputation, but there's not a safety factor. Now we're talking about the counterfeit electronics, batteries in particular, but also I was reading that there is a risk or a concern that there will be counterfeit COVID-19 vaccines because there is this huge demand in certain parts of the world. So there is a huge challenge that the entire logistics industry has. So I will come on to Dr. Pramod first, and then to Florian, and then others if they'd like to comment.
So Glenn, I will restrict my reply to you regarding batteries. And Peter mentioned two very important words. He said, yeah, either it is yes or no. So what happens for same thing, we find some people are saying yes blindly, some people are saying no blindly. So it's very important that the people knowledge level at all the these things should be passed on. So when we started facing this problem, what we did, 30% of my team is done a dangerous cargo certification. They have been trained, they have gone through refresher course. So it is very important that even the industry from side also knows this very well, the regulations, how to do packaging is required right from design stage. So this is very important as far as the batteries are concerned, because that is going to be really life. In every product you have batteries. When you have multiple products, it is going to be important. So I look at it in the way that the knowledge level at all the places should be there. We find some airlines refusing product, some airlines are happily taking these products. And then you have limited choice. Why they are refusing, nobody is able to tell. Why people are accepted and how what carries, they don't pass on that knowledge. So it's very important to us as an industry that airline experts, and Peter mentioned about all experts, they should pass on this knowledge to the deep level, to the industry, to all the people who are anytime approaching for importing a battery or taking it from India or bringing it to India. I think this is very important. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So Florian, you wanted to comment as well?
Yeah, I just, basically applaud and echo what Peter said and also Dr. Bramon. I mean, at Lufthansa Cargo, we have a zero tolerance policy on that, very clear. We make it very transparent. We have these cases, for example, in Hong Kong, where we immediately place embargoes, and these embargoes can take weeks and even months before we take these embargoes out. So we have zero tolerance. And I remember we were sitting in Frankfurt a couple of years ago. We got a presentation about, the threat, the possible effects of lithium batteries when it gets fire, when it gets fire on the ground. This pallet which was parked next to an airplane, the fire brigade was there within 3 minutes, and it took them an hour to get the flames out. So I think the as Peter said, we have all these examples, and the problem is that it's not so much about it's probably an additional problem that you have fake batteries and so on. But even real batteries, if they're not properly declared, and I think this is one of the problems we are facing in some of the stations worldwide. Also here ex-Asia, and it's really something where, as I said, we have zero tolerance, whoever that is, small forwarders, big forwarders. In most cases, we found out that they also did not know that there is some batteries in there. But that is something we need to jointly solve, as Peter said. And remember that what I mentioned a few minutes ago, these bring all the people together, awareness campaigns, etc., etc. But then also be very consequent when people are not or don't want to be part of that. This is just a very, very dangerous topic, and of course there's a need. We all know that. I mean, I worked the last 8 years in Germany, and my biggest industry was, of course, the automotive industry, and we had permanent discussions with the car manufacturers. I said, "What can you offer?" They said, "Well, currently we cannot offer a feasible, also some a solution which is." From a rate perspective, somehow payable, and unless we don't have these solutions, and of course we're exploring all the different options on specific containers and so on and so on. But I think in the end, it will only be worked or can be solved with proper processes in place. And that has to go from the very beginning to the very end, and everybody has to be part of that. And it probably needs to be directed by by IATA and Airlines FIATA, with all parties involved. Otherwise, we will not be able to handle that, and the demand will continue. That's very clear. I mean, battery for the time being, if you like it or not. I mean, that's also a big discussion. Is battery really the right thing? For example, cars, but that's, I guess, is another discussion again when we talk about sustainability. But the demand is for the time being is definitely there, and we all need to find solutions. And maybe, as Peter said, maybe it's a no for airplanes, and then we need to see, is it safer to put it on a boat, or maybe on the train, or in the end we have to put it on trucks. I don't know. But on an airplane, that's a very dangerous topic.
Excellent. Thank you all for those very, very good comments there. And I think, as Peter had said at the beginning, I think we definitely need to get the regulators in. This, to me, is something that it's a national government challenge. It's the countries which are producing these, putting at risk their own manufacturing industry and their citizens' lives. So thank you all very much for that. Florian, I'd like to change direction slightly. Several of the previous speakers have talked about the need for digital processes, digital interface with customers, the need for sharing data. We need this high precious technical cargo going forward. It'll also be probably one of the major fights against counterfeit products, is using data to understand what's being moved. Now, you and I have had quite a few discussions in the past years about the speed of digitalization in the industry. What's your thoughts? Perhaps you'd like to share with everybody your thoughts.
Yeah, you mentioned my personal motto, and that is think positive. So I try to see it from the positive side, and let me start with that, and then maybe I add some more comments. So if I look back into what happened in the industry over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, I think I'm actually really impressed. Just to give you one example, and Clint, of course, you know the number, Peter, some other people in the audience probably as well. When it comes to the famous e-airway bill, the electronic airway bill, we started we started years ago. I remember, again, 10 years ago, I had a presentation in front of customers from a passenger colleague, and basically asking, can you tell my customers, how you managed the way from the paper ticket to the electronic ticket, and that was like a minimum 10 years ago. But if I just look back into let's say beginning of 2000, let's say 2013, I just have that number in front of me. We were at a global share of something like 3% of our airway bills were electronic, and 97% were paper, right? And then I think again it was driven by IATA, by the forwarders, by the airlines, by airports, all together increased this number. And now we are in the range of I think 75 is the last number, 75% penetration, which I think is of course not enough. Lufthansa is above 80%. Our goal is by the end of this year, latest next year, we want to be at 100%. So that is, I think, is a good example on the process side, where we jointly manage it. Was it way too slow? Of course, it was way too slow, but that's history. At least we are now on a good track to finalize, reach the 100%. And that is, of course, only one document. And then we have the e-house manifest. We're working on that. We have set ourselves a target of 50% this year. Probably we will reach already 70%. So we are making more progress because we learned from introducing the electronic airway bill, and there are more documents to follow. So I'm actually quite optimistic that this will continue. And then on the sales side, I think we also have some really nice examples. And I think especially in 2020 during the COVID situation, when it comes to digital sales, how we call it. I mean, we managed, I think, industry-wide, at least I know the Lufthansa figures, we are about 85-90% of electronic bookings. That's great. But we have been on that level for quite some time. But when it comes to digital sales, and that means it's not only booked, but then you still have to call someone, do you get the rate, and so on. And now we have implemented a tool, just like some other airlines have done that as well, where you can basically book a shipment, get instant rate, get an instant capacity, and there is no human involvement. And that was, when I look back, 2-3 years ago, it was basically at zero. And I think in the beginning of last year, it was still at something like 4 or 5%, and we are between 15 and 20%. So we have seen an incredible good increase. And then the other part which we are seeing is are these platforms. And you probably know the names. Cargo One is one in Europe. They have an incredible increase in their bookings, and I think this is the way forward. So digitalization definitely has reached the air freight industry, and I would say we just need to continue, maybe speed up even more, bring everybody together, and make sure that everybody understands the advantages, and it's something which nobody will stop. And so I'm actually quite happy with the progress. Again, trying to see it positive and not saying it's way too slow. At least we are making progress.
Excellent, and I think that's good. And to be honest, I know that last year has brought a lot of focus onto this, as people were saying, we don't even want to do handover of documents now. We want to not even share pens. That was actually interesting in some places, is that drivers were not, when they had to sign for documents, I'm not sharing a pen, So, I think, as sad as it seems that it was such a human tragedy, a situation that's caused, but if it's forcing people to work more digitally from home, we've had a situation where signing contracts, I'm in Switzerland, I can't even get things printed. I had to get a domestic printer because I couldn't go to the office. Print shops were all closed, and I had to get some documents printed, signed, and dispatched. Couldn't do it, literally couldn't do it. So I think sometimes as long as there can be some moves forward, great. So Raveen, actually on that same sort of thing about innovation and investment, that same theme, and congratulations again from, I didn't say it earlier, when you announced the figures in terms of growth during a challenging time. So well done from that perspective. But that's obviously an indication that demand for product coming through your airport is on the up. So what sort of investments are you undertaking to try and safeguard that future or invest in new areas, whether or not it's technology or infrastructure? What are you doing in that respect?
At our core, I think enabling volume and customer experience is at the core of our vision, and all our endeavors are focused in realizing this vision, keeping digital journey in mind. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Bangalore Airport is in the midst of delivering a 13,000 crore infrastructure expansion program that is close to $2 billion. As part of this program, we have already operationalized the second runway with Cat 3 capabilities, which will significantly enhance processing capability on the airside for both the passenger and cargo business. We are also in the process of commissioning Terminal 2, which will enable the airport to increase the processing capacity by 35 million passengers per year. All these actually infrastructure capital projects, which we are started 2-3 years ago, and when the pandemic hit, the decision taken by the airport was to continue with this investments despite the sentiments in the market and the traffic projections which were coming through during the pandemic situation. Capital investments are also in the pipeline for cargo capacity. We are currently at 570,000 metric tons. In the next 2-3 years, we look to up it to 1.1 million metric tons, which is the vision of India to touch 5 million metric tons in the next 5 years. So I think we are gearing up for that. Coming to the digital part, Glenn, and as a Bangalore Airport has significantly invested in digitization in the last 2-3 years. This is much before the pandemic. It's the only airport in India to have a center of excellence partnered with Accenture to develop airport digital products. These initiatives actually paid off quite well during the pandemic in establishing contactless processing at all levels, including cargo. DigiYatra is a domestic travel biometric driven program for which Bangalore Airport is a major contributor. This is something which the government of India is also working on. All the airports are participating in this to make sure that only using biometrics, at least to start with on domestic front, we will have a database which will merge with the airline PNR, and which will, once you are registered on this, then in future you can travel without any other identification, and it will be totally seamless at the airports, whoever subscribes to it. So it's a major digital activity which started 2-3 years ago, accelerated in the last 12 months, and in the last few months we have been using this extensively for our domestic travel, which has come down for pre-pandemic. So, as part of our smart airport digitalized and seamless connectivity, we are set to introduce the airport community system, further streamline air logistics. We are a little late in this digital platform development. Mumbai and Delhi already has it, but nevertheless, we want to deliver this, I would say, in the next couple of months. We are already ready. Our CTOs are already in the process of doing the UATs on this. On the infrastructure front for cargo, at least we have also commissioned a public bonded warehouse, one of the first airports to do this, which adds value to the for re-exports and the entire, I would say, the value chain for the supply chain that is involved from the airport campus. Additionally, we also in the process of opening an ECT, that is the Express Courier Terminal, which was under construction. We will be operationalizing it next month. We have world's best known courier players such as DHL, UPS, EICI, FedEx, who will start dedicated facility at on these premises, opening up additional capacity for general cargo at our other 2 terminals. So I think we are fully, despite the pandemic, I think cargo is the shining star. So we will continue investing And I think this is something which we are focused, and I think our management is also quite focused on this. On the last bit I want to say is the airport truck management facility. I think that is a much neglected activity at Indian airports. So we have tied up with Shell to develop a world-class dedicated truck management facility, which can, park 500 trucks at this terminal, which will also provide facilities to the drivers like fueling, restaurant facilities, medical rest areas, etc. So I think as an airport, we continue investing, as I said, over $2 billion. And if the opportunity arises that we need to invest more, our promoters are more than willing to do this, and we will continue investing. Thank you, Florian.
Thank you very much, Raveen. That sounds excellent. Dr. Pramod, you want to make one quick comment?
Yeah, I wanted to make one point on digitization. We talked about airport community system, etc. What we did in COVID situation in somewhere in July, we connected, Mumbai, we have 80% of cargo at Mumbai International Airport. And then there is Mumbai International Airport, then there is a GMAX system, which is developed by Kale Logistics. We connected that system to our own system, web-based local portal. So I have an update every 4 hours of my all shipments. So then the full this data is pulled and is pushed into my web-based system, where I came to know what time flight landed, what time the IGM filed, what time bill of entry filed, what time is the package brought to this thing, what truck number was there, and I get this automatically without manual intervention every 4 hours continuously. So this gives me, I'm now not dependent on anybody. I just look into my system and look at this. I am able to get this. So this is very important that we do the digitization, which will avoid any manual intervention and 100% transparency. So I know exactly now what is happening at airport with various agencies, whether broker has done timely, whether segregation is timely, whether the truck load or truck came inside properly, what time it loaded. Everything is available with this collaboration. Again, the collaboration is a key to really digitization and success into our industry. Yeah. So I just wanted to make this point.
Well said. Well said. Now, gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our time. I just want to do a quick sum up, but I first of all want to thank you all for some of the best answers. This has probably been one of the most educational for me panels I've had the pleasure of moderating in my nearly 40 years in this industry. I think any MBA students that were watching this, they could have actually done an entire 1-2 years MBA just from listening to the five of you with your insights. And just a quick recap, I think we had from the start of the entire supply chain, and in fact, it's the need for creating that right environment to invest in the heavy electronics. So it's about education, skill sets, it's about innovation, it's about investing in capabilities. It's then about finding great partnerships, digitalizing those processes and those interfaces, making sure that the product actually is secure throughout the whole supply chain with great visibility, with great reliability, and tailored solutions so that the air cargo supply chain can be customer-centric and ensure that as the innovation pace of change accelerates, that the industry can continue to supply the solutions that's required. I think that's been a brilliant panel. I know Parul wants to now play a final video to close us out, but beforehand, this is the point I would ask the audience to give you all a round of applause. You probably can't hear it, as there's 4,000 people from around the world applauding you right now, so I will applaud you. Thank you all very much for your wonderful insights, and I hand it over to Parul. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Between the six of you, it was a total experience of more than 200 years, and it was very, very evident in the communication that we just heard. And I'm sure that everybody present all across the world enjoyed the session as much as we did. Thank you, everybody, for such wonderful insights. And I now request ACFI to please play the session video. So, with all these wonderful thoughts, I now invite our honorary treasurer, Mr. Avinash Rajdan from ACFI and CEO of Delhi Cargo Service Center, a chartered accountant by profession. He has 25 years of experience in air cargo as well as manufacturing industry over the past few decades. So, over to you, Avinash.
Thank you, Pam. Ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for giving me an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this momentous occasion of ACFI Annual Event 2021. And I feel honored and privileged to put all my gratitude into words. On behalf of ACFI board members, members of Air Cargo Forum India, convey deep regards and hearty thanks to our chief guest, the Honorable Minister of Civil Aviation, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, for his gracious presence. Indeed, the gracious presence of Shri Puri and his words of wisdom have inspired all of us present here in this conference. I also wish to express our thanks to our guest of honor, Mrs. Vandana Agarwal, Senior Economic Advisor, Minister of Civil Aviation, who graced this occasion and encouraged us with words of wisdom and guidance. I also wish to convey sincere thanks to all the distinguished members of ACFI and delegates from the entire air cargo industry who joined this event from many parts of the country and overseas and participated in the question and answer sessions online. You all gave us the most precious gift, your valuable time. I thank Mr. Adil Malia for his motivating and exciting keynote address. I also thank all the distinguished speakers of various business sessions for sharing their perspectives on the themes of their business sessions. I also wish to express my sincere thanks to Ms. Parul Kulshresh for her excellent session anchoring and moderators Mrs. Tulsi Mir Chandani, Mr. Yashpal Sharma and Mr. Glenn Hughes for stimulating discussions. We remain grateful to our valuable sponsors and convey our thanks for their immense support and contribution for the success of this event. We look forward to your continued patronage for future endeavors of ACFI. I also wish to thank the office bearers of the various associations of air cargo industry for their gracious presence in this event. My sincere thanks also go to print and electronic news media for their presence, and I hope they will give today's event an excellent coverage in their publications. Not the most important, my special and hearty thanks to the members of ACFI Secretariat, Mr. K.S. Kumar, Mr. D.R. Juyal, Mr. Vijay Sharma for their tireless efforts, immense hard work, and invaluable contribution in bringing this event to a reality. Most importantly, I would like to thank the organizing team of this event, the members of ACFI Event Management Team, under the chairmanship of Mr. Arvind Agarwal, who with his excellent leadership skills, along with mentorship of Yashpal Sharma, steered this virtual event magnificently. And lastly, my sincere gratitude goes to all the office bearers of ACFI board, including Mr. Cyrus Katagara, President ACFI, Mr. Yashpal Sharma, Vice President ACFI, and Mr. Sanjeev Edward, Honorary Secretary ACFI, for their consistent guidance and support to ACFI Event Management Team for making this event a success. Today, my words may not be enough to express our gratitude. And we in ACFI once again thank you and wish you all the very best. Jai.
Thank you so much, Mr. Avinash, for summing the conference so well. I now bid farewell to all of you and also bid amazing health to you going forward. Stay safe, stay healthy. I request the organizers to play our sponsors video who've played an important role in supporting the event. Signing off. Bye-bye. Shabba khair. Hasta la vista.
We have many times been asked the question how we got the name Gina. It was in the year 1900 where our great-grandfather, Mr. Palanji Kadgara, being passionate and an entrepreneur, wanted to start a business, but due to lack of finances, was unable to do so. He then approached his dear friend, Mr. Gina, for a loan, which was initially declined, and subsequently, Mr. Gina offered to gift the amount to him, a princely sum of $75, with the sole condition that the business be named after him. Even after 100 years in existence, we continue to maintain the ethics and high service standards expected of a well-established and respected brand such as Gina. Being amongst the oldest freight forwarders in the country, Gina has always been looked up as a pioneer and a trendsetter within our industry. As a responsible corporate entity, we have always believed in supporting the weaker section of society. In the year 1982, a charitable trust, Kadgara Foundation, was set up. Several thousands of people have benefited from our charitable trust over the years.
I'm proud to be standing here in front of our founders of Gina & Company. CRISIL has given us the top rating for financial strength and operating performance. Our endeavor is to always upgrade the skills of our staff to meet the demand of the times. Recently, we introduced the mobile apps on iOS and Android. The motto of Gina is heart counts and not head counts.
We at Gina's, we believe in excellence and we really pursue this with all our spirits. So whatever parameters we put down from the systems to monitor our performance are based on customer expectations. All the national forwarders of our size have been either taken over or bought by multinationals. We would be more or less the last one left. Not that in our long years of service we've not had very tempting offers from multinationals to buy us out, but we have one standard reply, that Gina is not a business for us, it's our hobby. How can one sell a hobby? We welcome you to Gina.
Because we're moving with you.